"Take it off," the liberal TV host said, his voice cutting sharply through the room like a challenge too bold to ignore. He wasn't asking casually. No, this was an order. His eyes locked on Karoline Leavitt, a young, unapologetically faithful leader standing at the heart of a crowded room in the aftermath of her press conference. All eyes followed his words, landing on the simple, gleaming necklace she wore, a symbol of her faith, her belief in God, and, as some would later say, her unshakable courage. This wasn't just about a piece of jewelry. This was a moment meant to humiliate her, to strip her of her principles, inch by inch. But instead, it turned into an extraordinary example of grace under fire. Who is Karoline Leavitt? A fighter in every sense of the word. Bold, articulate, and deeply rooted in her beliefs, Karoline has always represented a new kind of leadership. Young but with wisdom beyond her years, she rose as a voice for those who often feel silenced. The day of this confrontation, she had just wrapped up a press conference addressing important topics like unity, freedom of speech, and the right to express oneself fully in a divided world. But clearly, not everyone shared her vision of freedom. The liberal TV host had a grudge. Their exchanges in the past had been heated, but this time, it wasn't about policy or political opinions. It was about something far more personal, her faith. "Take it off," he sneered again, his voice louder this time as though daring her to refuse. The room hung in uneasy silence. Even those who agreed with him shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure of what would follow. But Karoline? She didn't flinch. With steady resolve, she tilted her head slightly and offered the faintest, most disarming smile. And then, very calmly, she responded, "You want me to take it off? My faith? That's what this necklace represents. My faith, my relationship with God, my strength. And you're asking me to remove it because you disagree with it?" The words weren't defensive. They weren't said in anger or defiance, but in a measured, thoughtful way that immediately reframed the narrative. Suddenly, this wasn't about a necklace. It was about something much deeper. But before we get to her response, which left every single person in the room speechless, let's take a moment to understand what brought Karoline to that pivotal moment. Karoline Leavitt wasn't born into privilege or ease, nor was she someone who fit the mold of a traditional political leader. She grew up in a modest family where faith wasn't just something spoken about on Sundays. It was woven into the fabric of their lives. Her parents taught her to lean on God in times of uncertainty, to find strength in prayer, and to never apologize for her beliefs. Faith is not about shouting louder than others, her mother often told her. It's about living with conviction even when no one else does. Karoline carried this principle with her through her entire life. From high school debates to college lectures where she was often the sole voice for her worldview, she learned early on that standing up for what you believe in can sometimes put a target on your back. But she also learned that when you're willing to stand firm, you earn respect, even from those who disagree with you. And standing firm is exactly what she did that day. After the liberal host's antagonistic question, Karoline took a deep breath and focused not on the loaded words he'd flung at her, but on the teaching she'd spent years cultivating. The idea that faith doesn't have to be barked or argued to have power. Sometimes its quiet strength does all the talking. "I'm sorry if my necklace makes you uncomfortable," she began, her voice steady. "But I wonder, why does it offend you so much? Are you really angry about a piece of jewelry or about what it stands for?" There was a shift in the air. Everyone listening felt it. Her tone wasn't combative. It was inviting, urging the man eyeing her with disdain to pause and reflect. "This necklace," she continued, holding it gently between her fingers, "is not just an accessory. It is a reminder of the strength I've received in my darkest hours, when nothing else could bring me peace. A reminder of the values I strive to live by: love, kindness, and the unwavering belief that every single person around me has inherent worth, regardless of whether they share my faith or not." The room was silent. Even the TV host, who was clearly prepared to escalate the exchange, took a step back as her words began to sink in. But Karoline wasn't done. "You see, I don't wear this necklace to make others believe what I believe. God gives every person the gift of free will, and that includes the choice to follow Him or not to. I respect that deeply. But I wear this because it reminds me of something you can't see. It reminds me of how far I've come, the battles I've fought, and the strength I've gained not by my strength, but through God's grace." She paused, letting the words linger in the stillness of the room. Cameras flashed, pens scribbled, but the energy in the space was undeniable. "You said I should take it off, as though it's something I can remove as easily as you think. But my faith isn't a decoration. It's not something I put on in the morning and leave behind at night. It's who I am. It informs every choice I make, every policy I advocate for, every interaction I have. And I say this knowing full well that not everyone believes the same. That's okay." Now, her words weren't just directed at the host. They were for everyone in the room, everyone who had ever felt attacked, silenced, or shamed for their beliefs. "I wear this not because I think my faith makes me better than anyone else, but because it reminds me to be better. Better than I was yesterday. Better to my friends and family. Better to strangers who may need kindness more than I realize. That is what my faith symbolizes. And if that offends you, then maybe it's not my necklace that's the issue. Maybe it's something only you can reconcile." The liberal host opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. He looked at her, then at the cameras around him, clearly wrestling with the implications of her statement. He'd walked into that moment ready to embarrass her, to frame her as a hypocrite. But instead, she had calmly, gracefully exposed his own bias, not with aggression, but with truth. Karoline closed by saying something that many called the defining moment of her career thus far. Unity isn't about making everyone the same. It's about respecting the differences that make us who we are. This necklace may symbolize my faith in God, but what unites us as people is so much bigger than any symbol. It's found in how we treat each other, how we listen, how we build bridges rather than burn them. If you disagree with me, I welcome the discussion. But I won't hide who I am, and I wouldn't ask you to either. The room erupted into applause. The TV host, though visibly shaken, managed to nod, perhaps realizing that he too had been given grace in that moment. A clash that started with anger ended in unexpected reflection. Some called it a win for Karoline. Others called it a win for something bigger: faith, resilience, and the courage to stand for what you believe, without tearing others down to do it. And as for the necklace, it stayed right where it belonged, proudly worn by a woman who refused to shrink in the face of adversity. Because in that moment, Karoline showed the world what true strength looks like. It's rooted not in the symbols we wear, but in the principles we live by.